Picture a society where no one has any money. People have to barter or steal to get the things one needs to live. This might seem a little far-fetched when money has invaded every facet of our life today, but is it so far-fetched that it couldn't happen in the future? Let's start by thinking where most of our money actually is. Most of our money today is actually digital, meaning that it's not something that you can just get in a bill form and walk around with. It's something that is completely online and imaginary. To exemplify this, think that I have $10,000 in the bank. Now, the bank only has to keep 10% of that. That means the other 90% can be loaned out to whoever it wants to loan it out to. So let's say they loan them out to Caitlin. She then has $9,000 that she can use for whatever. And let's say she puts it back in the bank. The bank is now holding on to $19,000, although it only had $10,000 in the first place. We do this again and loan it out to a third person, and suddenly the bank has about $36,000. This means that after just 2 cycles of this, the bank has in effect made 2 imaginary dollars that can't actually be accounted for every $1 that was put in. If we continue this cycle many more times, it just gets more out of control. Now, what would happen if all of these files vanished? As technology has been advancing more and more, all of these records have started becoming digital. Although there are still some paper records of some of the data, banks are moving towards having this information stored electronically. They tend to store the same data several times over in several different servers, but just managing this amount of data is approximately 10% of the banking industry's cost, and the cost of maintaining the servers is even higher. In addition with this, credit cards, ATMs, and the internet, along with many other things, make it to where our knowledge of our money is needing to be faster and faster. In fact, it is getting too fast for us to be able to keep up with it in terms of paper. All of this points to the idea that banks are getting to the point where they have no choice but to have one digital storage system for their currency. But what if a high-altitude EMP knocks out that server, or a cyber attack wipes the system? Well, the banks would technically still have the real money. It would be nothing compared to what the world would require it to have. So what we were wondering next was, how would people react to this? To answer this question, Caitlin and I walked around and talked to a bunch of different people who all come from different styles of living.
What would you do if money just vanished tomorrow? It was completely useless.
I don't know. I think that I would band together with a lot of my neighbors and family and learn how to take care of ourselves off the land using our talents as we have it at this moment.
So you'd have to go off of what you have, and you don't feel as though you have all of those skills that you want yet?
I do not.
So you don't feel as though you're prepared for a moneyless society?
I don't.
How about food and water? You said that you want to learn to garden or farm in that case, but do you feel as though you have enough water supplies? Where would you get that?
I do not feel that I have enough water supplies. I worry about that sometimes because I have a little bit of I've developed into a little bit of a hippie, and I feel that we need to learn how to fend for ourselves sometimes. And as far as water goes, and especially because I have other children in my care besides my family, if there was some sort of catastrophe, I don't know how I would deal with that, because water is one of the most important things.
It would be kind of hard to pay for stuff, so, I'd try to find out a way to, pay for stuff, figure out what's wrong with the government, so.
So you'd look into new systems like bartering. Yeah. So do you feel prepared today for a moneyless society?
We would have no choice but to, be prepared, because it would, hit us without us, even knowing, so, but.
How do you feel about getting food and water in your current state?
I think it would come pretty easily, with the rivers and lakes, that we have around, so, we could just use the water that, come from the rivers and lakes, so.
Tomorrow, though?
Panic, because I'm not ready.
So, since you don't feel ready, how do you feel about your current food or water supplies if something like this happened?
We have enough food for 3 months. I end up same with water, but anything after that, we don't have anything after that supply, and that's just for our family. That doesn't include anybody else helping friends or neighbors.
So, if you were trying to keep it best for your family and you went the 3 months, you'd have to figure out all the skills you need at that point.
I'd probably, well, we kind of have a plan together with a group of friends that have a large piece of property. If something came down to where money was no issue, as far as nothing, you couldn't buy anything with money. Money was irrelevant. It'd be kind of a quick struggle, panic to put something together as far as some sort of food system to where we could have our own system, not have to rely on others or having to barter.
So, do you feel prepared for a moneyless society?
No.
I'd probably freak out. I would definitely have a heart attack. I wouldn't know where to begin, but I would try my hardest to figure out what the next step would be.
So you're saying you don't feel prepared right now if something...
Absolutely not.
All right, so in terms of food and water, how well do you think you could accrue them currently?
Food, I think I would be okay. I started a garden myself, and my neighbors as well. They also have gardens, and we kind of trade off vegetables and things like that. Water would probably be the biggest concern for me, to try to make sure that I get fresh and clean water.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Would it be a positive or negative outcome if money became valueless?
I think it'd be a negative outcome because it would just be us going backwards, like how like Indians and like everybody just like traded with like goods and stuff. And so if money became valueless, then we're not actually taking a step forward. We're just like limiting ourselves to go farther advanced.
And she's right. The only empire that has ever succeeded in a moneyless society was the Incan Empire, who instead of having currency, had people pay taxes in the form of work. You didn't send in your hard-earned profit. Instead, you sent in an amount of crops, or whatever type of work you may have done, to the central government, who would then hold it and distribute it amongst the entirety of the empire. It was very well organized, and even as the empire got larger, it was still able to do this. It managed this in two different ways. First, the Incan Empire constantly was expanding, meaning it always had more farmland and more resources to be able to use. In addition, whenever it took over one of these new places, it immediately integrated them into the system. For they didn't always strike aggressively, they would often send negotiations over, and they would allow people to instead choose to join, at which point they would be able to become part of the Incan royalty. But as you could hear within these interviews, people's ideas weren't always peachy. They were worried about having to get resources or band together with friends to make sure they could hold out against whatever forces may be trying to stop them from having those resources. But a lot of that issue is that people are so worried about how money is integral today. However, there are a few societies that manage to hold off without using money as a resource. They are the Woodstock and the Mesa.
From the Woodstock homepage, in 1969, more than 500,000 people came together, united in a message of peace, openness, and cultural expression, and demonstrated how a generation could be heard. Today, Woodstock lives on. Woodstock is committed to living by its principles. We believe in universal human rights, ethical business practices, unfettered creative expression, free trade, the love and care of our planet, the power of the individual to make a difference, and the overwhelming impact of communities to act as agents of peaceful change. And that means that anything with the Woodstock name on it embodies those principles. Woodstock is a great example of a giving community. Instead of trading or bartering, the community simply gives what others need. The Mesa, located in New Mexico, about 5 miles from Rio Grande and 25 miles from the nearest town, the Mesa is full of people that are fed up with life under today's government and have decided to move towards a different way of living. A lot of the people down in the Mesa trade and share with each other. They're going around and just sharing and trading with their neighbors instead of actually using any form of money. The different people on the Mesa grow food for their community and accumulate anything else that others might need. The Mesa is a good example on what the U.S. could be like if money became valueless.
So what does this all mean? All of this information is really overwhelming. In fact, that is how people would feel too. Overwhelmed. If a cyber attack or a high-altitude EMP knocked out all of the banking systems and ruined all of our currency, people would have to act fast. And as seen in the interviews, people are not only unprepared for that reality, but they are also going to do the worst thing that one can do in that kind of situation. Panic. Most people don't like to admit to panicking about things, but people were more than willing to admit to panicking about this. An event like this would throw the entire world into a state of chaos. Rioting could start as the rush for supplies becomes violent, people would split into factions and gangs, and instead of the peaceful life of Woodstock, or the quasi-peaceful life of the Incans in the Mesa, people wouldn't be able to choose this lifestyle, it'd be forced upon them. So Caitlin and I would like to offer this question to you in parting. How prepared are you for this disaster, whether it be man-made or natural? How would you react in this situation? Are you ready?